The Veil of Elarion. They say the world of Elarion was born from silence, not from sound or light, but from a pause in eternity itself. No one remembers that silence now, for the air is filled with whispers that never end. Whispers of gods who vanished, of promises forgotten, and of a veil invisible yet ever present that separates truth from illusion. I was a child when I first heard those whispers, faint and warm, like the echo of an ancient lullaby humming beneath my skin. It came at night, when the wind trembled across the silver plains, carrying the voices of something older than stars. My grandmother said they were the remnants of the first harmony, a divine resonance left behind when the gods withdrew their hands from creation. I didn't believe her then, but belief has a way of finding you, especially when the world you know begins to unravel. The village of our valley lay between two realms. Not that anyone dared to say it aloud. We were told it was a blessed land, kissed by morning light longer than anywhere else. But when dusk arrived, it lingered too, clinging to the stones and trees as if reluctant to leave. I remember watching the twilight curl around the horizon, thinking it looked like smoke trapped inside glass. It was beautiful, but it always made my chest tighten, as if the night was watching back. On the day everything began, the sky was wrong. It was too bright, too still, like the world had forgotten to breathe. The river mirrored the heavens perfectly, no ripple disturbing its reflection. Even the birds had fallen silent. And then I saw her. She stood at the edge of the water, a figure wrapped in light that shimmered like liquid gold. Her hair floated as though the wind obeyed her alone. She looked no older than 20, yet her eyes held the kind of calm that only eternity could teach. She smiled, and I felt the air hum again, the same resonance I had heard as a child. When she spoke, her voice didn't move through the air, it moved through me. "Do you know what you carry?" she asked. I wanted to answer, but my lips refused. She stepped closer, her feet leaving no mark on the grass. "The veil is thinning," she whispered, "and when it breaks, every forgotten promise will demand to be kept." Then she touched my forehead, and in that instant, the world folded. I saw rivers of light winding through the sky, faces made of flame and shadow, cities built on clouds of memory. I heard laughter and mourning woven into one song, and behind it all a heartbeat vast enough to shake the stars. When I blinked, she was gone. Only her reflection remained, fading into the stillness of the river. I didn't sleep that night. The whispers had returned, louder, clearer, weaving through my thoughts like threads of silver. They spoke of the luminous pact, a covenant sealed between gods and mortals before time learned to walk. I had never heard of it, yet I felt its weight in my chest, as though it was carved into my being. At dawn, I found a mark glowing faintly beneath my wrist, a circle with 3 intersecting lines, pulsing like a second heartbeat. The same symbol adorned the old ruins beyond our valley, the ones we were forbidden to enter. My grandmother once warned me, that mark belongs to those who can see what others cannot. Do not let the light find you, child, for it never lets go. But curiosity has always been my undoing. I followed the path leading to the ruins, through fields of trembling silvergrass that hummed as I passed. The air thickened, as though time itself resisted me. When I reached the archway, felt something shift, not in the world around me, but within. The ruins were older than stone, built before memory had form. Symbols glowed faintly on the walls, moving like the reflection of fire under water, and at the center stood an altar of glass, cracked and luminous. As I approached, the whispers converged into a single voice, neither male nor female, both ancient and kind. "You are the last echo," it said, "the thread between what was and what must be." A warmth spread from my mark to my heart, flooding my body with a radiant pulse that made the air shimmer. I saw images, a realm of divine beings retreating into the veil, sealing it with light to protect the world from their own fading essence. And among them, one remained, the keeper who chose to guard the balance until the time of return. Her face? It was the same woman by the river. Then the vision twisted. Shadows rose behind her, whispering her name in longing and grief. The light fractured, and I saw my own reflection staring back from the shards. The whispers stopped. The silence that followed was so complete it felt alive. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on the grass outside the ruins, the sun bleeding through the mist. My mark still glowed faintly, and in its pulse, I heard a distant call, rhythmic, deliberate, like a drumbeat from another world. It was drawing me north, toward the mountains. I returned home to find our valley changed. The villagers moved as if in a dream, their eyes glassy, their voices hollow. Even the air seemed heavier, thick with something unseen. My grandmother was waiting for me, her gaze fierce yet trembling. "You saw her," she said without question. "The keeper," I nodded. Her hands shook as she handed me a worn pendant shaped like the same mark on my wrist. "Then the time has come. The veil stirs, and with it, the old light awakens. You must not let it consume you. Remember, light and shadow share the same root. Balance is not born from purity, but from understanding." I wanted to ask her what she meant, but before I could, the sky dimmed. Not like nightfall, but as though something vast had drawn across the sun. A tremor ran through the ground, and the river began to glow faintly, casting silver reflections that danced like spirits. "The veil," she whispered, "it's breathing again." And then I heard it, a low, resonant hum spreading through the earth. The same tone that had haunted me since childhood. It was not sound, it was memory, waking. Over the next days, strange things began to happen. The boundaries between dream and waking thinned. People spoke to reflections that answered back. The shadows of trees moved even when the wind was still. And at night, the sky shimmered faintly, like fabric being stretched afar. The whispers grew more coherent. They spoke names I didn't recognize, fragments of vows, songs of light that once bound the heavens and the mortal realm. Each time I listened, I felt my mark burn hotter. I began to understand not through words, but through sensation that something was calling me beyond the veil. On the seventh night, as the moon fractured into twin arcs of light, I followed the call again. It led me to the northern cliffs, where the wind sang through hollow stone. There, beneath the starlit expanse, I saw her once more, the keeper, standing within a circle of floating symbols. "You came," she said, her voice softer now, carrying both sorrow and relief. "The thread awakens. What am I?" I asked. "Why me?" She looked past me, toward the horizon, where dawn trembled like a heartbeat. "Because you remember," she said. Even when the world forgot, she lifted her hand, and from the air between us unfolded a vision, a realm woven of pure light, collapsing under its own brilliance. The gods had created the veil to preserve both themselves and humanity, for too much light can blind as surely as darkness can. But now, the veil weakened, and their forgotten promises clawed to be fulfilled. "You are the bridge," she said, her eyes glistening with ancient sorrow. "The last bond of the luminous pact. Through you, the balance may be restored, or undone." The ground beneath us shimmered. I felt something stir deep within, a force both radiant and wild, as if every heartbeat was a ripple in creation itself. She reached out, placing her hand over my mark. The world went silent again, the same silence that had birthed Elarion, and within that silence, I heard the truth. The veil was not just a barrier, it was alive. It had always been, and it was waking. When I opened my eyes, the keeper was gone, and the circle of symbols had vanished into the wind. But I was no longer the same. My eyes saw light where others saw shadow, patterns of energy flowing through every leaf, every stone. And somewhere, far beyond the mountains, something vast and luminous stirred, waiting for me to find it. The whispers no longer frightened me. They were no longer foreign. They were part of me. But as I walked back toward our valley, I realized something that made my heart tremble. The river was no longer still. Its reflection no longer matched the sky. Two moons floated above, one pale and one gold. The veil had begun to break, and the world would never be silent again. I didn't notice the sound at first. It began as a faint vibration beneath the soles of my feet. Steady, rhythmic, like a pulse hiding in the soil. Our valley had fallen quiet after the first night of the twin moons. Yet beneath that quiet was a strange tension, as though the land itself was holding its breath. The villagers no longer spoke openly. They moved through the streets with the cautious grace of those walking through dreams. They didn't understand. Their eyes glimmered faintly now, not with life, but with reflection. as though something beyond them had begun to look through. When I returned home, my grandmother's chair was empty. Only her pendant remained on the table, glowing faintly against the wood. The mark on my wrist pulsed in answer, almost like it recognized the light. The moment I touched the pendant, a warmth spread through my chest, and her voice, soft, trembling, echoed inside my thoughts. The keeper cannot protect the veil alone. The old songs must rise again. You must find the archivist before the solstice. The veil remembers those who remember it. Her words faded, leaving the taste of ozone in the air. I felt an ache behind my ribs, a mix of longing and understanding I couldn't quite name. My grandmother had always known more than she said, but now even her silence had turned to guidance. I didn't know who the archivist was, but I knew where to begin. The old map hidden beneath the altar in the ruins had once shown the boundaries of Elarion before the veil separated realms. Beyond the northern cliffs lay a stretch of mist called the Mirror Path, a place the villagers never mentioned. They said those who walked there heard voices that spoke in their own tone, offering truths they weren't ready to face. But if the whispers were leading me there, then that was where I would go. Before leaving, I tied my grandmother's pendant to my wrist beside the mark. The light from both seemed to breathe in unison. I stepped into the twilight, where dawn and dusk seemed to blur, and followed the hum that threaded through the air. The mirror path wasn't marked on any modern map. It began at the place where the river curved away from the valley, vanishing into an endless sea of fog. The first step I took into it felt like crossing from one heartbeat to another. The air changed, softer and colder, filled with drifting lights that pulsed faintly like fireflies made of memory. There were reflections everywhere, in droplets, in mist, in air itself, moving slightly out of sync with my gestures. I heard my own voice whisper, "Do you remember who you are?" I froze. The reflection tilted its head, its eyes glowing with pale gold. "Do you?" it asked, and the sound wasn't echo but presence. It reached out, and I realized that what I was seeing wasn't a reflection at all, but something layered behind reality. I took another step. The mist parted to reveal an ancient bridge of crystal and stone, stretching over an abyss of shifting light. The hum of the veil was stronger here, a low vibration threading through the bones of the earth. Every breath felt alive, aware. Halfway across the bridge, the air thickened, and the light before me began to twist. From the mist emerged a figure wrapped in robes of silver threads, their face hidden behind a mask carved from mirrored glass. The voice that came from behind it was calm, but carried centuries of weight. "You shouldn't have crossed." "Not yet," they said. "I was told to find the archivist," I answered. Though my voice trembled, the figure tilted their head. "Then you've already found them." Something in the air shifted, the fog brightened until I could see faint shapes moving within it, images of lives long gone, moments suspended in time like trapped echoes. "You guard the memories," I whispered. "I am the memory," the archivist replied. "Every vow ever spoken beneath the veil, every promise forgotten by mortals, they live within me. But memory is fracturing. The veil bleeds light where it once held balance." They extended a hand, and I saw that their skin was transparent, light running through it like veins. "Tell me, child of the mark, has the keeper spoken to you?" I nodded. "She said the veil is waking, that I'm part of the pact." At that, the archivist stepped closer. "Then it is true. The thread has chosen its echo." Their voice softened, carrying something close to sorrow. "Long ago, when the gods sealed the veil, they left behind 3 keepers, one to guard the light, one to preserve the memory, and one to bear the thread of continuation. The light was the keeper, the memory the thread." They reached toward my wrist. "Was never meant to awaken in flesh again." I wanted to ask what that meant, but the air around us began to tremble. The mist rippled, darkening at the edges. The archivist turned sharply, as if hearing a sound I could not. "They are listening," they whispered. "The forgotten chorus. Fragments of gods who fell asleep inside the veil's seams. When the veil weakens, they stir." The ground beneath the bridge began to pulse with radiant light, and the reflections in the mist warped faces emerging, eyes like shards of dawn, voices blending into a chant that felt like the echo of creation itself. I covered my ears, but it wasn't sound. It was thought flooding the mind. "Return the light. Restore the song. End the silence. The archivist grasped my arm, their form flickering like glass under heat. Go to the city beneath the stars to Elindra. The keeper waits there, where the first veil was woven. You will find what you seek, but remember, not every light brings truth. Some blind, those who look too long. Before I could answer, a surge of energy swept through the bridge. The mist exploded in a burst of white, and I felt myself falling not through air, but through memory. When I woke, I lay beneath a canopy of translucent trees, their leaves humming faintly with light. The sky above me rippled like water, and beyond it, I could see glimpses of constellations shifting alive, moving like living beings watching from beyond. My body ached, but my wrist still glowed. The pendant had cracked, a thin line of light bleeding from its center. I wasn't alone. A man stood a few steps away, cloaked in indigo and shadow, watching me. His eyes were pale silver, reflecting more light than they received. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. The veil doesn't open its heart to wanderers. I'm not wandering, I said. I'm searching. He studied me, then sighed a sound that carried centuries of exhaustion. Then you must be one of her chosen. The keeper's threads always find their way here eventually. He knelt, touching the soil. The ground shimmered where his fingers brushed it, symbols unfolding like blooming flowers. This place, he said, is the edge of dreams. Between the mortal realm and Elindra, few pass through without losing themselves. I need to reach the sea, I said. Before the solstice. He looked up sharply. Then the veil truly is breaking. I waited, but he said nothing more. Instead, he drew a line through the glowing symbols, and a faint path of light appeared leading deeper into the forest. Follow the song, he said. It will guide you. But be warned, the closer you come to Elindra, the louder the world will remember what it has lost. Who are you? I asked. He smiled faintly, and for a moment, I thought I saw something divine flicker behind his gaze. Once, he said, I was called a sentinel. Now, I am only a remnant of light, waiting for silence. Before I could speak again, he vanished, dissolved into mist, leaving behind only the faint echo of his voice. I followed the glowing path through the forest, where every leaf and branch seemed to hum in harmony with the beat of my pulse. The whispers followed, no longer chaotic, but forming patterns, fragments of stories told by the veil itself. I heard the laughter of gods, the prayers of mortals, the song of the first dawn. It wasn't history, it was living memory. As I walked, the air began to shimmer. Shapes emerged, fragments of cities suspended in light, people made of starlight moving through invisible streets. The closer I came, the more I realized I wasn't just walking through space, but through layers of existence, each one overlapping the next. At last, the forest gave way to a vast expanse of crystal plains, reflecting the stars above. And in the distance, rising from the horizon like a dream of light, stood Elindra, the city beneath the stars. Towers of glass and gold spiraled upward, each movement of wind causing them to shift colors like living flame. But even from afar, I could sense it, a fracture, faint but spreading. The light of the city flickered, uneven, as though something within it was struggling to hold form. When I entered the outer gates, no one stopped me. The streets were empty, though voices echoed faintly, conversations that repeated themselves, overlapping fragments of memory caught in endless replay. It was beautiful, but haunting. At the city's center stood a vast hall carved from luminous crystal, its walls etched with flowing lines that pulsed in time with my mark. Inside, the air shimmered, and the keeper appeared once more, though now her light was dimmer, her form flickering like candlelight in wind. You found the archivist, she said softly. Yes, I answered. They told me the veil is breaking, that I am the thread meant to restore it. Her expression darkened. Restore? Perhaps. But restoration demands remembrance, and remembrance demands cost. Are you ready to bear it? Before I could answer, a sound like thunder rolled through the city. The walls trembled. Cracks of light split across the ceiling, pouring radiance that bent the air. The keeper looked upward, eyes wide. They are coming through. Who? The forgotten chorus, the voices of what was lost when the gods sealed the veil. They seek form again. The silence wasn't empty. It breathed. It watched. It waited. I could feel its weight pressing gently against my skin. Not oppressive, but intimate, as though it recognized me. The air shimmered with faint, golden threads that curved through the darkness like drifting veins of light, pulsing softly in rhythm with my own heartbeat. Each pulse carried a faint sound, not a voice, but a tonal low hum that resonated through my bones, ancient and patient. It was the same sound that had followed me all my life, but now had form. The veil was alive. I stepped forward, and the darkness moved. It parted like mist, revealing a path of faintly glowing symbols etched into the invisible air. Each step I took caused them to shift, rearranging themselves into new patterns, words of a language older than thought. The keeper's voice echoed faintly within the silence. The wellspring is not a place. It is the memory of light. To reach it, you must remember what the world forgot. But how does one remember what was erased before memory was born? I closed my eyes and listened. The hum deepened, wrapping around me. The darkness began to move again, not as space, but as story. I saw visions flickering in the air like breath on glass, oceans of starlight, beings made of song, shaping mountains and rivers with their voices. I saw the first dawn breaking across the void, scattering light that wove into form, and among them, 3 figures stood together: the keeper, the archivist, and a third whose face I couldn't see, the thread. They stood around a luminous core, weaving strands of gold, shadow, and silence together, until the air solidified into something vast and radiant. The veil itself, a barrier and a bridge, separating divine resonance from mortal chaos. I watched as they sealed it with their own essence, anchoring their souls into its foundation. And then, the third figure, the one I couldn't see, turned toward me, their face hidden by shifting light. "You were always meant to return," they said. I gasped and stumbled back. The vision fractured. The hum turned sharper, higher. The air shivered, and I realized I was no longer standing still. I was being drawn downward, as if gravity itself had become thought. The ground fell away, and I descended through layers of light and shadow, through memories of things that never truly existed and yet shaped everything that did. When I landed, I stood before a lake of still light. Its surface mirrored the cosmos, stars drifting slowly across, galaxies curling and dissolving like smoke. In its center floated a crystal orb, vast as a mountain, suspended in silence. Inside it, light swirled and shifted, birthing forms that resembled wings, faces, cities, and dreams. The wellspring, the living heart of the veil. As I stepped closer, the mark on my wrist began to burn, not painfully, but with a kind of radiant urgency. The pendant cracked further, releasing a small stream of golden light that spiraled toward the orb and vanished within it. The wellspring responded. The surface rippled, and a voice, neither male nor female, echoed from everywhere at once. "You carry the last thread." I looked around, but there was no figure, no being, only light. "What am I supposed to do?" "Remember," it said simply. "I don't understand." "Remember what?" "The beginning." The light erupted around me, and the world dissolved again. I stood in a place that wasn't a place, a horizon of endless dawn, where time curled upon itself like breath in cold air. Before me stood the keeper, shining and solemn, and beside her the archivist, their mask cracked, light bleeding through the fractures. The air shimmered with threads of gold stretching into infinity, each one pulsing with life. "The veil is failing," the keeper said. "The forgotten chorus grows stronger. Soon, the balance will break." The archivist's voice was weary, their form flickering. "And when it does, the light will consume itself. The world will not end, but it will forget again. Every promise, every story, every song. Silence will rule where creation once sang. Earn to them both. Tell me what I am. Tell me what the thread means." The keeper's gaze softened, though her eyes shimmered with grief. "You are the continuation, the living bond that ties the veil to memory, memory to light, and light to form. When the gods withdrew, part of the thread was left behind, hidden in the rhythm of mortal life, passed from dream to dream until one heart remembered. That heart was yours." My chest tightened. You mean, I was never entirely human? You were more than human, the archivist said gently. You were the song that learned to walk. The words struck through me like thunder made of warmth. I felt something vast stir within, an echo of countless voices, harmonizing, calling. I saw fragments of my own life, each moment lit with new meaning, the whispers in childhood, the river's reflection, the hum in the soil. Every sign had been part of a pattern. The veil had never been outside me. It was me. But why me? I asked. Why now? Because the veil remembers through you, said the keeper, and now it has begun to wake. You must teach it balance before it forgets its own purpose. How? By singing its name. The air trembled. The light around the wellspring grew brighter, forming concentric rings of energy that pulls like waves of sound turned visible. The veil's name is the first song, the archivist said. It is not spoken, it is felt. You must remember it from within. I closed my eyes. The hum deepened. It filled every part of me, every cell, every thought. And then, without thinking, I breathed not words, but tone. A long, trembling note that rose and fell like wind through glass. The sound vibrated through the wellspring, and the golden threads flared in response, intertwining and weaving around me. The orb's surface rippled, its light expanding outward until the entire lake shone like the heart of a star. Then the tone fractured, a scream of energy tore through the silence, and from the light emerged shapes, fragments of the forgotten chorus, the disembodied echoes of divine thought. They were beautiful and terrible all at once, shimmering forms of half-light, their voices 1,000 harmonies at once. Return us. Complete the circle. Let light be whole again. The keeper raised her hands. You cannot exist without shadow, she cried, her voice echoing through the endless dawn. But the chorus did not stop. Their light began to merge with the wellspring, warping its calm surface into turbulent waves. The ground shook, and the very fabric of the veil began to tear, faint fissures appearing across the horizon. I felt the pull, the temptation of their song. It was intoxicating, pure harmony, free from doubt, from pain, from imperfection. It promised peace, an eternity of radiant stillness. I understood then, that was the danger. If the chorus succeeded, the world would dissolve into light, perfect, endless, and utterly lifeless. Balance was not the absence of shadow, but its partnership. I stepped forward, raising my voice again, this time not in imitation, but in defiance. My tone wove through theirs, softer, human, filled with imperfection. It trembled, cracked, faltered, and yet it carried warmth, the essence of memory and choice. The chorus faltered. Their tones fractured, colliding against my song, like light meeting reflection. The archivist's mask shattered completely, and their form blazed into pure radiance. Sing, child of the thread, they cried. Remind the veil what it means to feel. I sang again. The melody rose, no longer sound, but pure resonance. Each note a memory, my grandmother's voice, the laughter in our valley, the trembling of twilight on silver fields. I sang until the chorus's brilliance softened, their light bending, harmonizing with mine. The keeper joined me, her voice weaving above mine like wind through gold. Together, our tones formed the first song, the same one that had shaped the veil in the beginning. The wellspring responded, its light folding inward, the fractures closing, the storm of energy subsiding. And then, silence, true silence. But it was not empty this time. It was whole. The chorus dissolved into soft luminescence, merging peacefully into the wellspring. The light dimmed to a steady glow, no longer restless. The keeper's form steadied, her eyes filled with quiet awe. It remembers, she whispered. The archivist's fading light smiled faintly. And so do we. I fell to my knees, trembling. The mark on my wrist glowed brighter than ever, then slowly began to fade, its light seeping into my skin. I felt a warmth spread through me, not power, but belonging. The veil's hum was now part of my heartbeat. The keeper approached, kneeling beside me. You've done what none of us could. You've reminded the veil of its purpose to balance creation and remembrance. I looked up at her. What happens now? She smiled, though sorrow lingered in her gaze. Now, the world will change. The boundaries between realms will soften, not vanish. Mortals will dream clearer. The divine will listen closer. But as for you, she placed her hand over my chest, where my heart still trembled from the resonance. You are the bridge now, the living echo of the veil. Wherever you walk, it will breathe with you. Light wrapped around me. The wellspring began to fade from sight, replaced by the sound of wind and river. I blinked, and I was standing once more on the silver plains outside our valley. The village lay before me, bathed in dawn light. People stirred, laughing, calling to one another, unaware of what had passed. Yet the air was different, softer, clearer. The hum of the veil whispered through the leaves, gentle and alive. I touched my wrist. The mark was gone, but when I closed my eyes, I still felt it. A pulse of light deep within, steady and kind. The days after the wellspring felt different. Every breath I drew carried a faint resonance, a quiet echo of the veil that lingered in my bones. The world seemed bright, not in the sense of light, but in clarity. The way a river's surface sharpens when the wind dies. Yet with the clarity came weight. The veil was alive inside me now, pulsing gently, reminding me of its presence, its memory, its endless vigilance. I could no longer ignore its rhythm, nor the echoes that threaded through the air. The keeper had left, returning to her duties beyond the mortal plane. But her absence was a presence in itself, a constant warmth I could feel pressing against the edges of my consciousness. The archivist had vanished entirely, leaving only faint traces of silver light along the edges of memory, reminders that I was no longer alone in this task. I was the thread now, the living echo, and yet, I was human enough to feel doubt, fear, and the pull of simple inertia. Our valley seemed unchanged at first glance. Villagers laughed in the fields, tended their gardens, and carried on with the rhythm of life. Yet beneath that surface, subtle shifts revealed themselves. Shadows moved with an awareness I hadn't noticed before. Reflections lingered in the river, staring back longer than they should. And sometimes, just beyond the edge of vision, figures appeared for a heartbeat, pale and bright, like fragments of starlight that had drifted too close to the mortal world. I began to walk. Not aimlessly, but guided by a sense I could not name. A pull toward the north, toward the mountains, toward the place where the veil was thinnest. The whispers followed me, faint at first, like distant wind through leaves, then gradually clearer. Not chaotic anymore, but deliberate, organized. A chorus of voices speaking without words, ideas without sound, melodies without rhythm. They called to me, beckoning, reminding me of promises I had never consciously made, and yet somehow remembered. The path led through forests older than memory, trees with trunks so wide they could hide entire villages within their shadows. Moss covered the roots, glowing faintly where the light of my own resonance touched it. Birds of impossible colors flitted among the branches, their songs harmonizing in ways that seemed to carry meaning rather than mere sound. I realized I could hear the life of this place in a way I had never done before. Every insect, every leaf, every drop of water carried a faint pulse of the veil's rhythm. And then I found the ruins. Not the ones near our valley, but older, buried beneath centuries of soil and stone, hidden in the folds of the northern mountains. They were not made of ordinary stone, but of crystallized light, fractured and worn by time. As I stepped closer, a mark faint now, more like a memory than a living glow responded. The symbols etched into the surfaces pulsed softly, aligning themselves to the rhythm of my heartbeat. I entered the central chamber, where the floor had long since crumbled into a mosaic of glass and shadow. Light shimmered in the cracks, forming fleeting images of cities, oceans, and beings whose faces I could almost recognize. This was no ordinary ruin. It was a memory, preserved in the language of light itself. A presence made itself known. It was not the keeper, nor the archivist, but something older, quieter, infinitely patient. A being of pure resonance, shaped from echoes of forgotten stars. Its voice was not sound, but understanding. You walk within the memory of Elarion, it said. You carry the thread that binds what was to what must become. You are the bridge, and yet the bridge trembles. I swallowed, trying to comprehend. What do you want from me? Balance, it replied simply. The veil has remembered, and yet the forgotten stars stir. Fragments of creation left behind when the gods withdrew, seeking form once more. You must guide them, not through control, but through understanding. They are not enemies. They are echoes of the world that was. And they do not forgive ignorance. I nodded, though I was not sure what understanding meant in this context. The ruins began to shift, light folding into shadow, shadow into light, as if the building itself breathed. Symbols formed beneath my feet, responding to some unspoken rhythm within me. I realized I could influence them, through thought, but through feeling. Each step, each breath, each pulse of my heart, shaped the memory around me. The echoes of the forgotten stars appeared then, drifting in from the edges of perception. They were vast and beautiful, like constellations made manifest, yet dissonant. Their presence pulled at the veil's rhythm, threatening to unravel what I had so painstakingly stabilized. I felt the temptation the same I had faced at the wellspring to surrender to them, to let their brilliance flow unchecked, but I remembered the first song. Its melody was imperfect, human, alive. It had restored the wellspring, and it would guide me again. I focused, letting the memory of that resonance fill me. I breathed in the rhythm of the veil, and exhaled harmony into the ruins. The echoes faltered, their dissonance softening, weaving themselves into the song I carried. The being of resonance, the ancient memory itself observed silently, its form flickering with approval. You are learning, it said. The thread is alive because you remember not only light but shadow. Not only creation but imperfection. This is the essence of balance. Hours passed, though time seemed irrelevant. Each movement, each pulse, each breath contributed to the weaving of the song. The echoes of the forgotten stars aligned with my rhythm, and I realized that I could feel their stories. Fragments of worlds, memories of civilizations, whispers of beings who had never touched the mortal realm. I embraced them, acknowledged them, allowed their voices to become part of the resonance rather than trying to dominate it. As the song strengthened, the ruins responded. Cracks of light closed, fractured surfaces mended themselves with threads of golden luminescence. Symbols aligned into patterns of harmony, projecting visions into the air. The history of Elarion unbroken and yet renewed. I understood then that memory was not static. It was living, and it demanded participation. A sudden tremor shook the chamber, and the air grew thick with tension. The presence of the ancient being intensified, vibrating in harmony with my pulse. You are ready, it said. But the world outside tests patience. The forgotten stars do not linger forever. Soon, they will seek form beyond the ruins, in places unprepared to receive them. You must follow. I left the ruins, stepping into the northern plains. The sky was a canvas of shifting constellations, stars moving slowly in patterns I could now read. Each star pulsed with memory, carrying fragments of the forgotten star's essence. The air shimmered with light and shadow intertwined, reflecting the rhythm of the veil within me. I understood my task. It was not merely to restore balance, but to teach it to guide the fragments of creation so that they could coexist without unraveling the world. The first challenge appeared as a cluster of light near the horizon. Stars solidified into forms, winged beings of radiant brilliance, each exuding a resonance too powerful for untrained mortals to perceive. They drifted in confusion, searching for direction, threatening to scatter the veil's harmony. I stepped forward and extended my awareness, allowing the rhythm of my heartbeat and the memory of the first song to flow outward. The beings paused, sensing the pulse. I breathed again, deeper, letting the resonance of the veil fill them, not as command, but as guidance. Slowly, their forms stabilized, their light bending into harmony with mine. Hours, or was it days, passed as I continued to move across the plains, guiding clusters of forgotten stars toward alignment. Each encounter was different. Some were hesitant, others wild and chaotic, yet all responded to the song I carried. With every success, I felt the veil's pulse grow steadier within me, more resilient, more confident. Night fell, but it was not the darkness of ignorance or fear. It was a calm shade, interwoven with faint threads of light, a reminder that balance did not require dominance, only understanding. I rested briefly by the river that had once mirrored the sky of our valley, its surface now reflecting constellations and fragments of stars with gentle accuracy. My mark, though faint, still pulsed, and the pendant cracked but glowing lay beside me, a tether to the keeper's presence. The whispers returned, not as fragmented echoes, but as guidance. Move north. Align the 7 fragments. Preserve memory. Do not fear the brilliance. I rose and continued. The journey ahead was long, each step measured, each decision shaping not only the fragments, but the veil itself. I realized the path of the thread was endless, a commitment without conclusion. Yet it was alive, and so was I. Together, we were a single resonance, human in memory, light and shadow, imperfect and eternal. And somewhere beyond the mountains, the stars watched, not silently, not judgmentally, but with the patient knowledge of those who had birthed worlds and waited for them to learn to remember. I walked toward them, ready to guide the song, knowing that the veil and I were inseparable now. The echoes of the forgotten stars trembled in the distance, waiting, and I was ready to meet them,